Sul sito c'è nel sito ufficiale della Forza Armata, ufficiale al momento, mi sembra selezionata, c'è la modulistica per i professionisti della vita civile.
Ok, lo streaming è partito.
Mi fai partire il video? Fai un altro giro di video. Non si sente, non è che il video del Burrell non si sente. Tu lo senti il video?
Sì, sì.
Okay. Avete spento tutti i microfoni?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shared Awareness and Deconfliction in the Mediterranean Conference 2020. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tito Tolla, serving in the Italian Army and working in EUNAVFOR Med operations since October 2019, and part of the ShareMed 2020 conference organization. I'll guide you through the conference from event to event with the help of Petty Officer Mark Lamb, whom I'm inviting now to introduce the conference works right after the next video.
Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Petty Officer Mark Lamb of the Irish Naval Service, working in EUNAVFOR Med since the 8th of July of 2020. The European Naval Force Operation EUNAVFOR Med Irini is the EU latest mission and a direct mission successor of Operation Sophia. Operation Irini core task is to implement UN resolution on arms embargo in Libya and contribute to achieve peace and stability in Libya. Operation Irini secondary tasks are contribution of implementation of UN measures to prevent the illicit export of petroleum from Libya, provision of capacity building and training of Libyan Coast Guard and Navy, contribution to the disruption of business model of human smuggling and trafficking. Operation EUNAVFOR Med Irini started on the 31st of March 2020. There are currently 23 nations which contribute with personnel and assets to the operation. Special times require special resources. And as we are facing a worldwide spreading pandemic, SARS-CoV-19, we cannot simply meet in person as in past ShedMed editions. We cannot have conversations we used to have in person. Things are different now. Nevertheless, we are all here together, adapting to the situation as best as we can, using modern technology to make things happen, even if we are facing special circumstances in special times. In this two-day conference, you will have the possibility to follow 2 panel discussions, 3 working groups, and speeches from different actors involved in the Mediterranean Sea arena. The 2 panel discussions are: 1. The Mediterranean region in 2020, a historical arena connecting 3 continents and their population striving for stability. 2. The development of the blue economy of the Mediterranean is an immeasurable possibility to solve many of the challenges and to improve the livelihood of the Mediterranean communities. The 3 working groups developing simultaneously are: 1. Observatory on illicit activities. 2. Shipping industry coordination, building a more integrated approach. 3. Capacity building of the Libyan Coast Guard and Navy. Distinguished guests will address the audience in speaking order. Mr. Joseph Burrell, High Representative of the Union of Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, who will speak through a video message. General Claudio Graziano, Chairman of the EU Military Committee. Ms. Stephanie Turco-Williams, United Nations Support Mission in Libya, Mission Head and Acting Special Representative of the Secretary General for Libya, who will speak through a video message. General Enzo Vecchiarelli, Chief of Italian Defence General Staff. Admiral Robert Peter Burke, Commander of NATO Joint Force, Command Naples. As a general direction throughout the whole conference, please let me remind you that Q&A will be managed by a Q&A manager and panel moderator. If you have any question to a specific topic or to a speaker, you may send an email to your email account to Q&A manager polad1@euohq.defesa.it, so he is able to queue the questions before questions and answers periods. Direct audience intervention will be possible on limited specific cases only. Click on the raise hand icon if you want to be contacted or if you encounter any problem during the meeting. I would like to thank you for your participation in these special times. Enjoy the following 2 days of the first ShedMed conference of Operation Irene. I will now hand over to Operation Commander of Operation EUNAVFOR Med Irene, Rear Admiral Fabio Agostini, who is leading the operation since the very first day.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege this morning to welcome all of you to the 39th edition of the Share Awareness and Deconfliction in the Mediterranean Conference. This event allows all the people connected to reflect about the challenges of the region and possible future perspectives. This year's most remarkable phenomenon has undoubtedly been the COVID-19 pandemic that has caused so many victims around the world, at the same time deeply affecting the people's life as well as economy of the whole world. So the theme of this year's ShedMed, Challenges for Cooperation in the Mediterranean After the Global Pandemic, will help shed light on different possible scenarios and, through high-level speakers, will pave the way for possible new initiatives in common for the benefit of all actors that have interest in shared objectives related to this strategic area. I really care about this international seminar, which, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, will take place online. For 2 intense days, a virtual arena with more than 250 participants from 30 countries, 50 organizations, and 25 international journalists, all interested in the Mediterranean area, will be connected with the headquarters of the European Union Operation Irini that I have the honor to command. Hopefully, the technology will assist us to follow the event without problems. The effects of the pandemics are likely to continue for a while, as its impact has already changed the way we live and interact with each other. This is visible also in the Mediterranean basin, which represents a fundamental global crossroad in the world. The Mare Nostrum is a liquid bridge with commercial connection ranging from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific. We are talking about an area with a very complex web of interrelations and a very high rate of economy and cultural exchanges among historical and new players. The Mediterranean is a fulcrum between three continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It's a wide meeting point for different cultures, beliefs, and societies, a setting for unending immigration since the very beginning of civilization, as well as a theater for conflicts. A universe of differences that, rather than being appreciated for their wealth, ends up too often being a pretext for political, economical, religious clashes. The stability of the area is an essential element for the global security. It is, in fact, that a great number of the world's crises originated in the Mediterranean basin. The spread of Daesh, Libya instability, the Syrian war, tension in Lebanon, terrorist fighters, militias and contractors, the migration crisis, and regional contentions. The sea among lands, as its name implies, include developments in surrounding regions, as the Gulf of Guinea, the Sahel, the Mashrek, the Red Sea, the Horn of Africa, the Middle East, and the Indian Ocean. The basin provides then multiple strategic challenges significantly aggravated by the ongoing pandemic. It is a place where we are witnesses humanitarian crisis and migration flows, contraction of key sectors as tourism and transports, challenges to the shipping community, rethinking of energy choice, but also considerable changes in information spreading and press freedom. Therefore, we deem it necessary to think, understand, and share ideas on how to deal with the current period and what we follow the pandemic at economic, social, and structural level in the Mediterranean area. EUNAVFOR Med Irini is operating right at the heart of the Mediterranean Sea in order to assure the respect of United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya, but also to stem the illegal flow of oil smuggling, human trafficking, and hopefully soon train the Libyan Coast Guard and Navy. Irini is a part of a process involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks agreed last February at the Berlin conference. This represents the European Union truly holistic approach to the solution of a long-lasting conflict in Libya. Operation Irini is not the only player dealing with the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, cooperation should be enhanced with other actors and countries, even outside the European Union. Together, we can do much better, not just to address illicit trafficking, but also to preserve the regional economy affected by insecurity of the area. In the context of Operation Irini, we have tried to address this issue by adopting several measures, always keeping an impartial, balanced, and positive attitude. However, we are aware that there is a lot more to do at various levels, not only operational, in order to reasonably manage all the historical Mediterranean challenges and those added by COVID-19 pandemic. Irini, through the ShedMed conference, has the ambition to provide a proactive contribution. Remaining equidistant from the parties, we work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the central Mediterranean. Our future is written in this sea, the cradle of civilization, a blue road for the future, a scenario of challenges and great opportunities that COVID-19 pandemic obliges us to seize. It is our job to be effective, proactive, and vigilant for the common welfare. In conclusion, I hope you will enjoy the event, and I wish you all fruitful and enriching exchanges during these 2 days. Now, it is a great honor for me to introduce Mr. Josep Burrell, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy since December 2019. During his career, he was in charge of high-level political positions in Spain and in Europe. Josep Borrell was President of the European Parliament from 20 of July 2004 until 16th of January 2007. Due to concomitant commitments, he cannot be in live connection with us, but he sent us the following video message, which was recorded a few days ago. But, as you know, operations unfold fast and more of events happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly pleased to address you on the occasion of the ShedMed conference to share some thoughts on the European Union's strategic role in the Mediterranean. As someone who grew up at the shores of the Mare Nostrum, I know very well about the importance that this culturally diverse and rich region, a crossroad of 3 continents and a gateway to Europe, has for the European Union. It saddens me to see a once peaceful region to become increasingly unstable, a volatile region where the European Union faces increasing problems. War continues to ravage Libya and Syria, and no end for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is in sight. Tensions continue to increase in the eastern Mediterranean. There is a structural instability in Lebanon, and the pressure linked to migration flows continues. But despite the ongoing pandemic, 2020 has also brought some good news, in particular in Libya, unexpectedly. The launch of the Berlin International Conference at the United Nations facilitated Libyan political dialogue. Union, we are ready to support the implementation with concrete actions at all levels, mobilizing the full range of our tools, from diplomatic engagement to our CSDP instruments, always in the framework of and in support of the United Nations-led process. Of course, Operation Irini, and thanks to Operation Irini for this meeting, is a concrete illustration of our commitment to de-escalate the conflict and to pave the way for a sustainable peace agreement, an impartial tool at the disposal of the international community. Drawing on aerial, naval, and satellite assets, it is already delivering tangible results. Since its launch in March, Irini has conducted 3 inspections, 50 friendly approaches, more than 1,300 hailings, and it has shared 16 special reports with United Nations panel of experts on violation of the arms embargo. And we have backed Irani's actions with sanctions against private entities or individuals violating the arms embargo. Ladies and gentlemen, it proves that Iran is a clear demonstration of our commitment, the European Union commitment, to creating the conditions for a sustainable solution to the conflict in Libya and to bringing back peace and stability to the region. Yet, the European Union cannot do this alone. It's now time for all other members of the United Nations, to take their share of responsibility and stop fueling a conflict that has already caused too much pain and losses. We have historical opportunity to put an end to the conflict. We have a responsibility to work together for the security and stability of the Mediterranean. Forums such as the Shade Med can bring added value here by creating a space to exchange views and best practices and to coordinate our efforts. All of us are sharing the same goal, a more secure and stable Mare Nostrum. So let us seize the momentum and work together to bring peace and stability back to the shores of our Mediterranean. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your work.
Thanks to the High Representative, Mr. Burrell, for this significant intervention. I have the privilege now to introduce General Claudio Graziano, Chairman of the EU Military Committee since 2018. In his career, he took part in many international operations and was in charge of the highest positions in the Italian Army and Defense. Among others, he was the head of mission in UN Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, from 2007 to 2010. General Graziano, Comandante, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Many thanks to Admiral Agostini, to Fabio. I hope you're here well. Thank you, and thanks to his staff for organizing the event. I hope the platform will work because, of course, we have to deal with this COVID time in terms of digital communication. Sometimes it's a tough work. So first of all, let me tell you, I wish we all had the opportunity to gather in Rome in person. In my role of primary point of contact for European CSDP military mission and operation, which in this moment, I have to say, insists mainly in large Mediterranean areas, both at sea and ashore, and as a military advisor to the High Representative Vice President Mr. Burrell, I was really keen to meet you, but I remain confident that we will do that soon. Nothing can replace the work in presence. The pandemic has really contributed to complicate all aspects of our lives. And so the title of the conference is particularly appropriate. But that's also directly affected many of the security challenges we were facing before the outbreak. For a scenario that is now urgently calling for a joint approach by all of us, if we are to show resilience and come out of the crisis stronger than before. I am sure that the next 2 days you will discuss in depth and from different angles the need for this improved cooperation, particularly in the Mediterranean area. And let's start with the crisis. Without a doubt, the new year did not start very well. The events in Libya and Iraq, not a real surprise, were followed by deterioration of the security situation in East Med, as already said by Mr. Burrell, in Belarus, in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Lebanon, with state actors seeking new roles, pursuing their strategies, often feeling gap left by others. On top of this, the pandemic has further contributed to worsen a security scenario already compromised by the existing threats, like international terrorism, failed states, uncontrolled migration, disinformation, hybrid, and cyber. And finally, this crisis also brought to our attention other threats in non-conventional domain, like health, climate, or even energy, an issue we will deal with for the next decade or more. The food security situation will then be much more complex than the one we were experiencing nowadays, with no shortage of crises. So let's take a look to the impact of the pandemic in the Mediterranean region. As we know, while the impact of the pandemic has been severe at global level, it had an even stronger effect in those regions already devastated by conflict, and in those countries with fragile socioeconomic conditions. And this is especially true in the broad Mediterranean area, from Libya to Sahel, with magmatic dynamic filled with crisis, turning this region into one of the most volatile in the world, with geopolitical repercussions which go far beyond geographical borders. Therefore, the Mediterranean Sea has come back as the leading center of gravity for a wider geopolitical balance, being at the crossroad of three continents and the gateway to Europe, and the terminal of the crisis insisting in the MENA region and Sahel. And this is where Europe has turned its attention, to Africa and the root cause of the problem, what I call the triangle instability, made of international terrorism, illegal migration, even potential, and overall degraded security in the whole region. For Libya, among others, the Libyan crisis, which has been struggling the country for over a decade and further aggravating the regional situation, exemplifies the current chaos in Mediterranean, which is repercussion for the security in the euro region and its surrounding. But I have to say the Libyan case is extremely important because the solution of this crisis could bring a model for cooperation for the whole region. And we observe in Libya, and what we observe in Libya is that some external actors got directly involved in the conflict, further complicating the already complex situation, bringing unilateral strategies, exploiting proxy wars to continue their competition abroad. This strategy has been sending out a clear message also to other players, both regionally and externally. So there is the need of a coral response. In the unfortunate circumstances dominated by COVID, therefore, it is obvious how some of the new or old adversaries, like terrorists who never rest, are indeed taking advantage of the pandemic. Something that demands an urgent coral reaction, addressing the root cause of the problem in the region. First, by all European Union member states, which must speak at the best with a single voice, engaging in all the European Union defense initiatives, providing resources to CSDP mission and operation, even in this difficult time of COVID, and thus contributing to the achievement of the agreed level of ambition for European Union. Secondly, by a committed European Union capable of exploiting its integrated approach, made a complete set of instruments that I remember European Union is the only international organization to have at disposal this set of instruments. The political, the diplomatic, the economic, and yes, also the military. Since if there are no pure military solution to crisis, no crisis can be solved without the use of military means in an effective combination of soft and hard power. Something that the European Union must implement by practicing the language of power and not just speaking it. And finally, by all the international stakeholders in partnership, the European Union with the United Nations, the African Union, and of course with NATO, being the alliance our first natural partner in this endeavor, particularly for cross crisis. And I remember that cooperation with partners is one of the objectives of the global strategy of European Union, together with crisis management and protection of European Union citizens. For all of this, the European Union has a great opportunity to consolidate its network of cooperation, as one actor cannot tackle this challenge alone. And this is a real necessity. Also because COVID-19 crisis has shown a dramatic discrepancy between the scale of current challenges and the weakness of global governance. A gap already existing before, but more evident since the beginning of this year. Hence, the absolute need to improve the ties with all relevant regional organizations for actual initiative, for crisis management or capacity building, an area of cooperation where the Union has proved itself capable of expressing a true excellency. For instance, in Sahel, but also elsewhere in Africa, where we may even need to increase our engagement. Looking at the latest development, that the coup in Mali, tension in Ethiopia, or spreading violence in Sahel, suggested that more instability may characterize the upcoming scenario. All these are some of the areas where the European Union, in line with its 2016 global strategy and its increased level of ambition, has found an autonomous space where to engage and act more as a global security provider in coherence with the effort towards strategic autonomy. The strategic autonomy, I find appropriate to remind, that does not mean autonomy from someone, but autonomy to do something alone or in better cooperation with partners if possible, like with NATO. In this regard, it must be noted that European Union and NATO, although being different organizations with different problems, have worked side by side in a sort of continuity to today's solid partnership. But we must also admit, with the potential for cooperation yet to be fully exploited, from the strategic to the tactical level. The European Union, on its side, has made a lot of effort to contribute to this relation with NATO with a double approach. Indirectly, thanks to the set of European Defence Initiative, creating new tools like the Deadline Goals, CARD, PESCO, and European Defence Fund, practical ways for the member state to spend better and less for those capabilities need to play more. All initiatives must be noted, crafted to be in synergy with NATO, in particular with NATO defense planning process, to avoid duplication and waste resources, remembering that at the end, what is good for the European Union is good to NATO, and remembering the great principle of a single set of forces. But also directly, mainly through our CSDP military mission and operation. In fact, all the previous efforts are instrumental for the effective conduct of our CSDP military mission and operation, which will result in a direct way to support NATO, since our objectives are coherent and complementary with the one of the alliance. Of course, we should try to overcome some of the current obstacles to our cooperation with NATO, exploiting ways for an effective collaboration at the strategic, operational, and particularly tactical level, where we should not let political issues impede the necessary interaction on the field. A problem we might easily spot in the Mediterranean Sea between Operation Irini and Sea Guardian. And maybe in a better world, we would have even a single commitment, a single cooperation. But nowadays we should aim only at a better cooperation. Let's go to Operation Irini. Operation Irini, in fact, is the most visible and instrumental CSDP activity in the Mediterranean Sea. It has replaced Operation Sophia, which was also a very successful operation. Now the main focus is arms embargo, and Irini keep the other tasks as secondary ones. Irini is the only European military operation for Libya, through which European Union can really boost the perception of a European defense willing and capable to take its responsibility as a security provider. Of course, as it was said, with an increased cooperation with all partners, demonstrating impartial commitment towards the regional stability and modern cooperation for the whole international community. At this stand, through Operation Irini is still lacking essential contribution from member states in order to be able to fully achieve its mandate, a mandate that could easily have the potential to be expanded pending political decision for a more integrated role for the solution of the crisis. Nevertheless, given the circumstances, we must praise the operation for the considerable result achieved, also in spite of pandemic. And this allows me to briefly touch upon the effect that COVID-19 had on our CSDP mission and operation, and how the cooperation that this activity enjoys with the host nation could be improved. Following the outbreak of the pandemic, as in any other environment, a number of mitigation measures had to be put in place, in Irini as in all CSDP mission operations, with the double objective of safeguarding the health of our deployed personnel while guaranteeing at best the accomplishment of the mandate. The overall response was generally positive. While some training activities had to put on hold, the pandemic had a lower impact on the executive operation, particularly the maritime ones, which were able to go through the crisis with no discontinuity. Important to note is that besides the specific mandate, our mission operation cooperated with the host nation on all efforts to contain the pandemic within any of their means and capabilities. At the quarter level, for example, we established an internal task force of COVID-19 to collect data and respond to inquiries, information, informing the decision-making process. That said, there are areas where we shall be able to do more, working ahead on our resilience, and the number of lessons were identified, starting from the need to review contingency and business continuity planning. Additionally, we will have to improve coordination for health-related emergency by fostering partnership, sharing best practices, policies, and documentation, awareness of medical stockpiles, and whenever possible, through training and dedicated joint exercise. In the specific circumstances, through two specific shortfalls brought serious concern: the shortage of medical team and adequate communication equipment. While the lack of the latter represents a long-standing issue, a specific element that the pandemic emphasized was the importance of disposing adequate military medical team, both in terms of quality and quantity. And this reminding that any properly trained and equipped military medical team, thanks to its peculiarities, could be useful for many purposes. In a mission in Mali, or at sea with Irini, an intervention on board a ship, or in support of international authorities fighting the pandemic, or just to give support immediate to the host nation. And I conclude. While we all continue to struggle with the measure to contain the pandemic, professionally and personally, I would say we should not miss the unique chance that this crisis brings for improving our resilience. The pandemic has surfaced some of our weaknesses, especially collectively. It would simply be unacceptable not to do serious lessons working on remedies to approach these challenges together in a shared path for a worthwhile legacy. Thank you all. I wish you a very fruitful conference on this important topic. Thank you and all the best.
Thanks, Comandante. Thank you to the Chairman of the EU Military Committee, General Graziano, for your relevant intervention. We now go ahead with the panel of experts.
Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, We will now start with the first panel discussion regarding the topic, the Mediterranean region in 2020, a historical arena connecting 3 continents and their population striving for stability. The Mediterranean has always been provided as meeting arena amongst peoples, cultures, and religions. Historically, it is a hinge between 3 continents, each bare of great peculiarities, and it constitutes a space for main contemporary challenges to intersect and reflect. Millennia of sea trade have created a common ground, acknowledged on all its shores. Not even the global pandemic could make this fade. Challenges and new opportunities for regional security and stability. Let me introduce you to the moderator and the speakers. Moderator, Mr. Carlo Natale, European Security and Defence College, ESDC. The speakers, Ambassador Jose Antonio Sabadell, Professor Paolo Magri, Ms. Irene Fellin, Vice Admiral Retired Pascal Asser. Q&A will be managed by Q&A manager and panel moderator. If you have any questions to a specific topic or to a speaker, you may send an email using your email account to Q&A manager at polad1@euohq.defesa.it. So he's able to queue the questions before questions and answers periods. Mr. Natale, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope that you can see me and you can hear me well. Yes, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Mediterranean region in 2020, a historical arena connecting 3 continents and their populations striving for stability. This is the topics for our discussion today. And indeed, looking back at history, the Mediterranean Sea as a hinge between continents and civilizations has seen cycles of competition and cooperation. In a recent paper by a European think tank, I have read the notion that over millennia, the Mediterranean Sea has been at times a border, a bridge, and a gate. But there is no doubt that the interaction between the states and the societies have created a common ground that persists despite all existing challenges. So we need to answer this question: how can security challenges be addressed, and how can a new stability be found as a prerequisite for a new cycle of cooperation and common development? Our 4 distinguished panelists today will walk us through the complexity of these questions, each of them sharing their thoughts from their perspective and experiences. I see that 2 of them have already joined us, particularly Vice Admiral Pascal Asser and Dr. Irene Fellin. I will present them, and I will present the other 2 panelists of today when they join us. So Vice Admiral Pascal Asser entered in the Naval Academy in 1981. He has had an operational career in the surface forces, notably within the Carrier Strike Group. Having sailed for 15 years, he has been commanding at sea 3 times. Throughout his career, he took part in numerous operational missions, notably in the Mediterranean Sea. During the last 10 years, he assumed responsibilities at the political military level within the French Ministry of Defense. After having served twice in the Cabinet of Minister of Defense as head of the international unit dealing with Western world and Asia, and then head of the military cabinet, he was appointed Maritime Prefect, commander of the maritime zone of the English Channel and the North Sea. Since October 2018, he is Director General of the Fondation Méditerranée Études Stratégiques in Toulon, France. Dr. Fellini, Irene Fellini, is a senior researcher on gender and security issues at the Istituto Affari Internazionali of Rome, where she mainly works on research projects dealing with the implementation of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security in Mediterranean area in the framework of NATO, OSCE and the UN. She is currently working as project coordinator on the establishment of a Mediterranean Women Mediators Network, while at the same time she works on education and training programs about women, peace and security agenda. Prior to joining the Istituto Affari Internazionali, she worked as gender advisor of the Special Representative of NATO Secretary General for Women, Peace and Security, and as a consultant and UNDP and UNICEF in Ankara. She is the founder and president of the Italian antenna of Women in International Security Network. So I would start our discussion today with a question to Admiral Asser, with whom I would like to turn on a geopolitical perspective. In the past years, we have seen two major strategic developments, which will certainly have an impact on the balance of naval power in the Mediterranean. Following its intervention in Syria, Russia has consolidated its naval presence in the Mediterranean by securing its base in Tartus. On the other hand, we see Turkey assertiveness in pushing forward its Mavi Vatan or Blue Homeland doctrine, which pursues a projections of its military power in the Mediterranean. How do you see this development, Admiral, and how you think they can impact on the interest and strategic posture of the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you for your invitation. I'm very happy to feel the small of operations again. I join what Mr. Burrell said at the beginning. We are living in a time of increasing tensions in this area. And if I would like to focus today, as you said, on Russia and Turkey, which are, in my view, two the main challenges for the EU and European countries in the Med. My first idea is that we are living in a period of global strategic rupture, which destabilized the Mediterranean. And the main tendency, in my view, is that we are observing, and that's the first point, the decline of the West, a kind of de-Westernization. That is the awakening influence of the major Western powers, the US, but European countries as well, in terms of politics, military, but also in terms of value and culture. Remember where we were 30 years ago during the 90s. It was the time of the Barcelona process in the EU. It was the time of the Mediterranean dialogue in NATO. It was a time where there were a convergence between the both shores on a unique single organization, way of life, where the economy supersedes all the other aspects, the cultural aspects, politics, security, and we were more or less all joining the same world, more or less European worlds, and Turkey were supposed to join the EU, and Maghreb were more or less supposed to join or to be very near of the EU. Well, this world is over now. And when you look at the Mediterranean, the de-Westernization led to the end of this socio-economic convergence of the two shores towards an European model. And that's a big point, because the discrepancy between the two shores, north and south, generate growing frustrations and tensions within the countries of the south and between the two shores. And this frustration and these tensions are exploited by authoritarian powers and ideologies. That's clearly a point we can maybe discuss about the cause of that divergence. There is another point which leads to this de-Westernization. It's due to the rise of competitors, most of them driven, and that's a point, by a powerful feeling of revenge. First of all, China, that's a global, is now the global economic power. It's now the first political competitor to the US. Soon it will be the first military competitor. In the Med, China presence nowadays is still purely economic, but we see premises for a more military involvement in the future. We can be sure of it. Russia as well, clearly, despite the fact that it is still a relatively low power in terms of economy, it is a competitor because of its will to wait on a strategic point of view, the remarkable ability of its diplomatic tools, and clearly a powerful military capabilities. I will come back to Russia later on. And then regional powers are also taking the advantage of the opportunity given by the retraction of the US and the weakness of the EU to emancipate and expand their geopolitical room of maneuver. Turkey, I will go later on this supposed point, but also Israel, Egypt, and more Gulf states as Iran, Emirates, or Qatar are willing to play in the Med. So more and more regional powers are now playing in the Mediterranean, and that part of the point. A third idea I wanted to give to describe the general situation in the Med, in my point of view, is that this growth of competitors is accompanied by a strong resentment towards the West among a lot of countries. This feeling, often fueled by authoritarian regimes, has its roots in very old events, often unknown in Europe, but very well known in their country. In China, you know, it's unequal treaties of the 19th centuries. You have the Algerian decolonization. You have the Sèvres Treaty with Turkey. You have the Arabs' humiliation of the Six-Day War. You have for the Russia, the management of the post-Soviet era periods. All these events have very strong impact on the population, and it creates a big antagonism against the West in the population, which is often exploited by the governments. And you have as well this antagonism against the West is fueled by Muslim radicalism, and we have to take it into account for sure. Last point, in my view, is that at the same time, Western societies very often are fragilized by the impact of internet, the impact of social networks, which tend to balkanize them, which tend to fragilize them, and by comparison, it reinforces the authoritarian states, especially in the Med. So the trend is not favorable to Europe. It's more favorable to the newcomers, I would say. And the consequences of this evolution is that the rules that are prevailed for decades are now openly questioned and even violated. We face more and more unilateralism, neo-Bismarckian agreements, The use of force is more and more disinhibited, more and more easily used, and that's a new situation that you operational are facing. So for all these reasons, we are now entering in the Med in a period which is highly destabilized, waiting for maybe a new balance in the future, but today it's very destabilized. And the two major players in this strategic change in the Med today are, in my view, Russia and Turkey, which both wish to resume their historical imperial positions. And the question is, which of these two countries now pose the greatest challenge to Europe? I would say that the traditional answer would be for Russia, which is always suspected from hegemony vis-à-vis its Western neighbors. But the position of Turkey, both a country of the South, by its socio-economic characteristics, and at the same time, an emancipating revanchist regional power can raise questions. One word about Russia. Russia has a strategy in the Med that is both classic and destabilizing. Classic because the Mediterranean has always been a key point in Russia's maritime strategy for two main reasons. The first one, it's the only permanent access to warm seas. You know that it is only way for Russian Navy, once past the Turkish Strait for sure, to deploy warships to support diplomacy and to support military operations by sea. We know that to take advantage of it, Russia must meet three conditions: mastering the Black Sea, having a guarantee of easy access of the Turkish Straits, and having a base in the Med that allow to support the support of ships and thus the capability to be deployed for a long time. And you know, the annexion of Crimea in 14, the way Putin handled the Turkey's destruction of the Sukhoi 24 in Syria in 15, and the lease of Tartus base in 19 are clearly concrete illustration of these three conditions. The second reason for Russia is that beyond its strategic gesticulation, the Russian presence in the Med allows it to have an advanced defense of the Black Sea and thus protect the southern flank of Russia. So clearly, it's I would say a normal strategy for a country like Russia, but this presence represents as well a capacity of nuisance, a capacity to do harm facing the Westerners. First of all, military speaking, the Russian fleet cannot be anything but a disrupting force. The Russian fleet is isolated from its bases, and in face of the more powerful forces of the European neighboring countries, in face of the American force when they want to be present, the Russian force cannot face in the scenario of a big war. So clearly, these Russian forces are tailored to disrupt more than to prevail in case of a combat. So it's clearly a spoiler tool, which fits with the political objective of Russia. Since mid-2000, Russia is in a posture of opposition to the West, and in the Med, its position aims to demonstrate that the access to the Eastern Mediterranean can be denied to them. And that's all the tools, all the position in Russia in the Med are dedicated for that objective. So Russia, classical, but at the same time destabilizing posture in the Med. The second rising power in the Med is Turkey, which used its pivotal position to develop a neo-Ottoman strategy based at the same time on nationalism and political Islam. Ahmed Davutoglu, the former foreign advisor and then foreign minister and then prime minister of Recep Erdogan, who resigned in 2016, had theorized the notion of pivot states for Turkey, involved in three directions: Europe and the Balkans on one way, Central Asia on the other, and the Near and Middle East on the third one. And in this framework, Islam is seen as a factor of coherence between all these areas of influence. And clearly, it was a shift with the former choice done by Atatürk and the traditional Turkey policy, which used to anchor with the West. And so, since the beginning of the 2000s, clearly it was a new trend, a new choice for Turkey. And since that time, and even more after the failed coup of 2016, there have been an acceleration of Recep Erdogan, which feels that he can take the advantage of the opportunity offered by the retraction of the US and offered probably by the weakening of the EU to materialize the emancipation and strengthening of Turkey, which could once again become a major regional player, as it used to be during the Ottoman Empire. And he had initial success, the economic growth during the 2000s years, American blessing with Obama during those years as well, increasing influence during the Arab Spring in Tunisia, in Libya, and especially in Egypt with the election of Morsi. And then it faced difficulties in Syria, facing the Kurds and facing Russia, in Libya, in front of Egypt, the Emirates, Russia as well, or internal as well, after the municipal election in 2019. But both success and difficulties led Recep Erdogan into a kind of, I would say, headlong rush, carry on regardless. And when you see his involvement in Syria, in Cyprus, EEZ, in Libya, in the Aegean Sea, in Nagorno-Karabakh, clearly you see that the trend is there, and there is no reason why Turkey will change its policy. So Turkey is therefore, paradoxally, clearly an ally in NATO, which is necessary, which is very, very useful to contain the alliance southern flanks vis-à-vis Russia, and at the same time a disruptor in the central and eastern Med, seeking to increase its influence at the expense of the Europeans, at the expense of Russians, and also at the expense of Arabs' country competitor, such as Egypt, for example, or of the Gulf states. To conclude, for me, in my opinion, the situation in the Med is very characteristic of the new world. It is tense, it is unstable, it is not very predictable, it is the theater of action for many actors, uninhibited, with different objectives, but which interact with each other. Among them, Russia and Turkey are the main, in my view, would say challenges for Europe. It requires an analysis and response on a case-by-case basis, without hoping to encapsulate all problems in a single logic or a single solution. And this multiplicity of solutions must not make us forget, in my view, the importance of a point that must be the backbone of the European strategy. The EU must constitute itself as a strong and autonomous geopolitical entity, which is not the case today. And this EU must be able to identify and defend its interests by itself, because no one will do it for her. Well, thank you for your attention, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see that the other two panelists today have joined us. I also know that they have to leave earlier, so if you allow, I will give the floor to them first. It is my pleasure to present Ambassador José Antonio Sabadell, who is currently Ambassador Designate, Head of the Delegation of the European Union Delegation to Libya. Ambassador Sabadell is a Spanish diplomat. He has been a Spanish diplomat since 1993. He served also as ambassador, head of the European Union delegation to Mauritania between 2013 and 2017. Prior to this post, he was head of division North Africa, deputy chief of staff at the cabinet of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain, and cooperation technical counselor in the area of arms control. Before joining the EU as a designated ambassador to Libya, he was director of policy planning at the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 2018 and 2020, focusing on the strategic perspective of Spanish, European, and global policies. Ambassador Sabadell served also in a number of other capacities, including in Afghanistan, in the OSCE, in charge of political military affairs, Guatemala, Ecuador, and Saudi Arabia. He completed postgraduate studies on political sciences and sociology at the Department of Social History and History of Political Thought at the Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distancia in 2002 with a paper on the political control on military action. I also have the pleasure to introduce Professor Paolo Magri, who is Executive Vice President and Director of the Italian Institute for International Political Studies of Rome and Professor of International Relations at Bocconi University in Milan, Italy. He is also member of the Strategic Committee of the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs, member of the European member of the Europe Policy Group of the World Economic Forum in Davos, and a member of the Advisory Board of the Italian Entrepreneurial Association of Lombardy Region, member of the Board of Directors of the Italy-China Foundation, and Secretary of the Italian Group of the Trilateral Commission. He's a regular speaker, writer, and commentator to a number of media outlets on global issues, US foreign policy, Iran, and Middle East. Previously, he served as program director to the UN Secretariat in New York, and up to 2005, he was director of international affairs at the Bocconi University in Milan. So I would like to start with a question to Ambassador Sabadell. Ambassador, in your view, what is the impact of the Libyan crisis in the Mediterranean and on the EU policy? And in particular, how do you think the EU can contribute to the peace process in Libya? Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlo, for this presentation and for these questions. And thank you also to those who have organized this very timely and interesting meeting. I would in particular like to thank Admiral Agostini and his team, and wish them all the best in this very important and sensitive mission. To understand then the impact of the Libyan crisis, I would like to start by mentioning some preliminary ideas that can help us visualize the dimension of the challenges, but also the dimension of the opportunities. So the first fact, which is obvious, but we can flesh it out, I think can be relevant, is that Libya is a very large country with 1.7 million square kilometers and a population of 7 million, 3 of which live in Tripoli. It means that 4 million people live in a surface that's equivalent to Spain, France, Italy, and Germany put together. So that gives us an idea of the challenge it means to control the territory, but also the opportunity that we have. Second point is that Libya is a rich country. It doesn't feel like it when you go to Libya right now, but according to the National Oil Corporation, oil generated since 2011, since the revolution, equates to 150 billion euros. And there is a fund, the Libyan Investment Authority, which is frozen for the time being, but is estimated, the last estimate was around 60 billion euros that could be put at the disposal of Libyan development. Of course, this has a translation in terms of migration. Until 2011, 1.8 million workers, foreign workers lived in Libya, and that was their destination, their final destination. Now we have around 600,000, some of which consider Libya a transit country. So this means that if Libya would at some point in the near future change its political and economic situation, it will not only have an impact on Libya itself, but also the surrounding region. And if you add all this with its centrality in the Mediterranean and in the Sahel, in the north of Africa, you can understand how important strategically it is and how it can really define the future of several regions, of several regions. The Mediterranean, the north of Africa, the whole Middle East and North Africa, and the Sahel and West Africa. I will not go into a lot of detail, but as you know, the evolution of Libya as we know it now started in 2011 with a revolt that had a lot of in common with the rest of the revolts in the Arab world at that time, in particular the search of dignity. In Libya, it was probably more focused on political topics and less on socio-economics, on the socio-economic situation, because it's a rich country, but it was in the context of this, what was called at the time Arab Springs, of Arab revolutions. Unfortunately, in the case of Libya, it was followed by a period of chaos and uncertainty, in particular from 2014, due to two main factors that caused this instability and that still define the situation. I think they are important to understand what our role as European Union can be. The first one is that as a heritage of the Gaddafi era, there are no social structures, no political organization, so no institutions, official or unofficial. So this is a very complicated, this implies a very complicated situation for Libya, because it's not easy to understand who represents whom. So when we talk about tribal representations, when we talk about other things, we're trying to understand how that can be organized, but that is a very complex situation. The second factor is the international interventions, and previous speakers have addressed this. I will not go into details, but Libya is not only a proxy war, but it is also a proxy war. Even more, it is not only a war that is fought by local agents with an external input, but sometimes external agents are the ones who are playing this war. It's more than a war by telecommand. It's a war where foreign actors play a key central role. And it's increasingly a regional and a global game that is partly played with local rules. The third factor that defines where we are and how we would need to react is the dynamics of the conflict themselves. And we sometimes forget about that the conflict transforms societies. And the Libyan society right now is not the same than the Libyan society that existed at the beginning of the conflict. Power relations have changed, interests have been created, and there are certain groups who have an interest in the continuation of the conflict. So these three, let's say, factors, the lack of institutions and of representations, the intervention of international actors, and the dynamics of the conflict themselves define the situation at this point. At the same time, I think we may be at the end of the conflict cycle. Popular pressure has grown very, very strong and has managed to really change the situation, and this has been felt by both sides in the East and in the West. Since, I would say, a couple of months, there has been very, very significant progress. Oil production has resumed and oil exports. That means resources that will be available for the development of Libya. The ceasefire is not only working in practical terms, but there are practical agreements on how to implement it. The political dialogue is working. They have reached important agreements on elections and on some of the ideas of the interim institutions. A lot needs to be done for the time being, and the situation is very fragile. We will need to follow it very closely. But I think there is room for hope, and this conflict cycle may be ending. So what are we doing as the European Union, and what should we be doing in this changing environment? I think the first thing that we need to bear in mind is that the European Union has invested heavily in Libya. Although it is a rich country and cooperation will need to change, and I will address that, for the time being there is need to act on social services and on governance and other areas. And between 2014 and 2020, the European Union has dedicated around 700 million euros to different programs of cooperation in Libya. As I was saying, this needs to change. If the situation in Libya changes, we need to change the way we cooperate with Libya. And the timing in this particular case works very well, because at this point we are working on a new programming cycle for the European Union from 2021 to 2027. If the ceasefire holds, and if the political situation moves forward, we will need to adapt our cooperation in a way that the focus is not so much on finance itself, but on governance, security sector reforms, and really the construction of the state. There are new instruments like blending, in which you can mix private capital and public capital. There are infrastructure that can be rebuilt and create jobs. There is the green economy and solar energy. So I think there's a huge potential in our cooperation. A second area where we are working, and that, as you can imagine, has a lot of political impact, is migration. And here I need to be very, very clear. We are working on two separate objectives. The first one is border control, and we need to work on that. The second one is the protection of migrants. And my impression is that sometimes some groups focus on one or the other and tend to forget the other one. And that is not possible. As European Union, we need to focus on both of them. We need border control. We need border control. There's no way we can accept that the border will not be controlled, but that cannot come at the price of inhuman treatment of migrants. And sometimes I feel that in some cases, the message of reinforcing border control is reaching actors on the ground loud and clear, while the message that we are not ready to pay the price of inhuman treatment and arbitrary detention is sometimes lost in translation. So we need to reinforce both of them. The idea that border control is needed, the idea that this is not compatible, this cannot be compatible with mistreatment of migrants and refugees. At the same time, I think we need to take let's say, a wider, comprehensive view of migration. At this point, Libya expels migrants, but that has not been the traditional role or the traditional position of Libya along the years. Libya has absorbed migrants from surrounding countries, and when the situation, probably in the short term, will improve, Libya will also absorb migrants from the rest of the country. So maybe our migration policy towards Libya in the coming years will not be so much border control as a formulation of a migration policy that will provide with foreign workers that will be needed to rebuild the Libyan economy. At this point, and this is the third area where we are working with Libya, we are supporting the negotiations in all the tracks of the Berlin process. We are working very, very hardly on the political track. We coordinate with UNSMIL, supporting constructive actors, isolating spoilers with restrictive measures when this is needed. And I think it is important at this point to recognize that UNSMIL is the only track that can provide a comprehensive solution for Libya. The date for elections has been agreed. They should happen on the 24th of December 2021, and we are ready to support those elections in political terms, in technical terms, as observation, and in every aspect that is necessary. And maybe one thing that particularly concerns me is the dangers of hate speech and disinformation, which are already very dangerous in our countries, that are more dangerous in Libya. They can become even more dangerous in the context of an electoral campaign. And of course, we do all this with the perspective of human rights and the protection and inclusion of populations, including those that are more vulnerable. We also support the Berlin process in economic terms, and in this we have a special responsibility as co-chairs of the economic working group. We are trying to improve the delivery of basic services. Just to give you an idea of where we are, last summer, electricity cuts in Tripoli reached sometimes 20 hours per day, and that has caused a lot of strain for the population. We are also working on the distribution of income from oil, so that all the parts of Libya will receive their fair share, and that will be a basis for the peace process. And we are also working in the long term on economic reforms. That includes modifying the exchange rate system, ending or rationalizing subsidies, because for the time being, Libyan economy is dysfunctional, and it's serious modifications to work for the Libyans. The third track where we are working in the context of the Berlin process is security. And I think this is key at this point, because it's the base for the progress in all the other areas. We have, as a European Union, several tools on the ground. We are ready to retask them or reconsider their mandate if it is necessary and requested by Libyan authorities. I will start by probably the least known of these instruments, which is the European Union Liaison and Planning Committee, which is a cell, liaison and planning cell, which is based at the delegation and provides military expertise, mostly on planning, for the delegation, for member states, and also for UNSMIL as requested, and can provide also inputs in terms of ceasefire monitoring or the security sector reform. The second tool that already exists on the ground is the European Union Border Assistance Mission, which is based in Tripoli. It focuses on border management, but it also includes law enforcement and criminal justice. In the future, it can become involved mostly in the south of the country with an integrated approach for the region that would include not only border control as such, but also development, security, mediation, and other tasks. So UBAM can be potentially an extremely important task for the future of Libya. And of course, the last tool, but certainly not least, is IRINI, that we know very well, that is mandated to enforce the UN arms embargo, that has also some competencies in terms of capacity building and training. It is true that IRINI is perceived sometimes by Libyan authorities as unbalanced and as focusing more on arms embargo towards the west and not so much towards the east. I think the last visit by Admiral Agostini has dispelled some of these ideas, and there is, frankly speaking, a very positive reaction to what IRINI is doing, always taking into consideration the limitations of the mandate and the fact that it cannot do more than what the United Nations Security Council has authorized it to do. With all this, I think my main message would be to say that the European Union should be the actor of choice to improve the situation in Libya. We have an integrated toolbox that can include everything from security and hard security instruments to nation building, to human rights, to development, to soft financing. And if we are able to use our toolbox in a consistent manner, we will be able to make a significant contribution to the future of Libya. The point is that we cannot try to pick and choose what we want to solve. We cannot decide that our priority is migration or security or economy or human rights. because they are so interlinked with each other that if we try to solve one and forget the rest, the dynamics of the conflict will eat up the progress that we do in one of the areas. And in the end, it will be counterproductive. So the real only progress is a comprehensive one, where we work in all the topics at the same time. Because the conflicts are organized in clusters and they have concentric circles. If we don't work with all of them at the same time, I don't think we will be effective. And if I may, I would end by saying that as a European Union, we do not have a narrow agenda. We are not interested in one thing or one particular topic or the other. We want Libya to succeed. We want Libyans to succeed and take control of their own country. We are neighbors. We are good neighbors. And I cannot think of anything that is good for Libyan that is not also good for the Europeans and the other way around. Anything that's bad for Libya is bad for us as Europeans. So thank you so much. I'll stop there and I'm looking forward to a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I would like now to turn the floor to Professor Magri, who has also to leave earlier. Professor Magri, in the past month, you have appeared frequently on TV and newspapers to comment the presidential elections in the US. So my question would be, what impact can we expect from the new presidency of the United States in the Mediterranean region? And I would like also to complement these questions with another one, in particular on the impact of the COVID epidemic on the migration flows in the Mediterranean, which is a topic on which I think I understand you have been researching and working lately. Thank you. The floor is yours, Professor Magri.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Admiral Agostini for this kind invitation, which with a fortunate coincidence overlaps with our Rome Med conference, which is now on air, I would say, in Rome. Rome is really, with your conference and our conference, is the place to discuss the Mediterranean these days. And that explains also my need to leave a little bit early. I'm involved in many other 4 panels today in the other conference. Let me start to answer your question from the picture of the Mediterranean that Pascal Asser gave 10 minutes ago. A tense, unstable, unpredictable area. And the question you proposed, Mr. Natale, is how much Biden will get involved in this tense, unstable, and unpredictable area. More and differently from Trump, more and differently from Obama? We don't know yet. We can make some consideration, some reasoning. What we know from now is that the presidential victory of Joe Biden has been greeted with either relief or disappointment in the region, depending on which countries we look at. The country that is probably most happy, without showing, of course, with Biden election is Iran. Trump had started a personal political battle on Iran by leaving the nuclear deal and by slapping severe sanctions on the country. Biden, on the contrary, during his campaign, declared that, if elected, he would have rejoined the Iran nuclear deal and engaged in new talks with Tehran. The problem here is that Biden will face 2 main challenges ahead. The first, of course, is that he's not so sure that Iran, 4 years after Trump won the presidency, and a year from now, will still be willing to comply with the nuclear deal. There are presidential elections in Iran too, in June, next June, and they could bring to power some representative from the hardliner faction not so willing to engage in negotiation with the United States. The second challenge and probably the greatest challenge for the Biden administration, will be how to bring Iran in without leaving American allies in the MENA region out. In order to have Iran back in negotiation, the United States will have to provide sanctions relief to Tehran. But we know that Israel and Saudi Arabia are deeply opposed to this, as they fear that Iran will use the money to finance its policy of support to its proxy in the region, Hezbollah, Houthis. It will be very difficult for Biden to square the circle, as Israel has already made clear that it will not accept the US return to the Iranian nuclear deal. And this is the reason why the two countries most unhappy, without showing that much, of course, with the election results are probably Israel and Saudi Arabia, because they know that in Biden they will find a less appeasing ally than Trump. But this, of course, doesn't mean that the Biden presidency will reverse the historical alliance between the US and these countries, also with Obama. When it comes to Israel, Biden will most likely not move back the US embassy to Tel Aviv, and he will not most likely reverse the trend of normalization agreements between Israel and Arab states, which is clearly an anti-Iran agreement, and most likely will act as an anti-Iran negotiation cartel in the next few months. This is new. But he will probably not make Netanyahu any more gifts. There will be probably an attempt at rebuilding trust with the Palestinians by reopening the office of the Palestinian delegation in Washington, or by restoring financial aid to the UN agency. And we will probably witness a new attempt at mediating between Israel and the Palestinians, something that was completely neglected by the Trump administration. But no Israel-Palestine deal in view, I'm afraid, as for many others of his predecessor at the White House. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, here too we will see a confirmation of the alliance, as always, but differently from Trump, we will not see any blank check to the Saudi leadership. On the contrary, we could see some more pressure on Riyadh, for example, or on ending the war in Yemen, which Saudi Arabia is very anxious to do as well. Where we will hardly notice any difference between the two administrations will be Syria. In the Syrian conflict, the Trump administration policy was a continuation of the Obama-era policy. Keep US soldiers in, but avoid the escalation, and do the utmost to mediate between other foreign powers that have intervened there: Turkey, Russia, Iran, Israel. So with Biden, who, let's recall, as we all know, was vice president in 8 years of the Obama administration, and at the time was openly skeptical of Obama's failed attempt to mark a red line for Assad, with Biden, we will likely not see any particular difference on Syria. Sanctions will remain in place, US troops will continue to be present in the northeast, and the US will not likely permit reconstruction funds to flow into Syria without a political transition. The game changer for Syria lies in whether the incoming US administration will seek to engage Russia in dialogue, providing an opportunity for the US to pave the way for a settlement, and possibly how much the US will want to take part in any reconstruction effort as Assad appears to have won. Now Libya, which Ambassador dealt with a few minutes ago. In Libya too, Biden make the US approach more coherent than Trump's, but it seems unlikely that his administration, which is expected to contain many of the Democrat decision makers who lived through the fallout of the murder of Ambassador Chris Stevens in Benghazi, it's unlikely that they will put Libya high on their agenda. Clearly, after the 2011 decision to intervene in support of rebel forces and foster Gaddafi demise, any US administration has chosen to recognize that Libya remains mainly a Mediterranean problem, our problem, and that European countries will have to juggle with that problem alone. Finally, a question mark lies on the future of relationship with Turkey that gradually deteriorated over the past few years. The temptation for the incoming administration will be to punish Turkey for its many transgressions, for its military reprisal against Syrian Kurds, to the purchase of Russian missile defense system. Yet Turkey remains a NATO member and a key country for solving crises in the Mediterranean region, as mentioned before, not least because it is part to many of them. So we will probably see some attempt from Biden to seek a reset in the relationship with Ankara. Here too, however, it remains to be seen whether the other part actually wants such a reset at this point. So what's the overall picture? Some changes, some continuity with Obama, even some continuity with Trump. Overall, a more balanced, predictable policy. Now, Mr. Natale, let me move on your second question on the impact of COVID-19 in the MENA region on the crucial point of view of migration. We all know what happened on the southern shore or in neighboring country as an impact of cross-Mediterranean irregular migration. Take 2011. 40,000 Tunisians arrived in Italy after the Jasmine Revolution. The surge in irregular flow from Libya to Italy and Malta started as the civil war in the country became chronic in mid-2013. And take the 2015 refugee crisis. It was a byproduct of the Syrian civil war, as well as other war and political instability in Afghanistan or Iraq. To this, we are now moving in a scenario in which the pandemic has had a clear effect, but it's not the one that many expected. I think most experts looked at the pandemic through the lens of involuntary immobility. By closing borders, European countries in particular were sealing up and avoiding further migration. And the expectation was migrants would be much more wary to move for fear they would get infected with the novel coronavirus. Well, today it is clear that experts miscalculated. And it is perfectly clear that this is the case if we take irregular migration as a case in point. Arrivals to Italy are expected to more than triple from 11,000 in 2019 to around 32,000 by mid-November. Sure, these numbers are much smaller to the around 150, 180,000 migrants that arrived irregularly in Italy each year between 2014 and 2017. But still, they represent a significant increase. We at ISPI, we have called it a mini surge. And COVID is relevant to explain more than half of it. It's about Tunisia and the economic impact of the pandemic. Of the 32,000 that arrived to Italy this year, 60% came from Tunisia. And of these, almost everyone was Tunisian. This is the reverse of the usual situation in which Libya constitutes 90% of sea arrivals between 2014 and 2018. And the proportion of Tunisian instead of sub-Saharan African coming from Tunisia is much higher as well. The reason is straightforward. The COVID pandemic has disrupted the tourism industry on which around 10% of the Tunisian workforce relies on. And therefore, since July, we have seen a surge in irregular arrivals from the country, mostly of young, unemployed males. And the fact that Italy and many other countries are all but forbade regular migration this year did not allow these young males to enter the EU regularly as seasonal workers. Only the irregular migration channel was left, And Tunisia is geographically really close to Italy, it's just a step away. What does this show us? It shows that COVID is actually acting as a multiplier for the risk of irregular movement, and at the same time is increasing involuntary immobility. It seems a paradox, but it is not. For migrants coming from sub-Saharan Africa, increasing border restrictions do appear to have diminished crossing, at least for those towards Europe. But for potential migrants much closer to Europe, such as those coming from Tunisia or from Turkey to Greece, the possibility to cross remains the same, while the reason to move, in particular lower job opportunities at home, have increased by a lot. As COVID-19 is making many of the poor poorer, this trend risks becoming a constant for the next few years. Irregular migration is becoming more and more a regional matter. Looking at the brighter side, a more regional phenomenon might be more easily addressed through regional solution, and this is what the intra-Mediterranean dialogue, the one you are having today, the one we are having in Rome at RomeMed, is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magri. I would like now to give the floor to Dr. Irene Fellin.
Thank you. Can you listen to me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Fellin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Yes, no.
Yes, yeah, sorry. My question is the following. In October 2017, during the Italian mandate as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation launched the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network in collaboration with the Istituto Affari Internazionali of Rome and the Women in International Security of Italy. The initiative acknowledges the need to increase women's meaningful participation in peace processes within a key region for global peace and stability. Dr. Fellin, you are the co-founder and president of Women in International Security of Italy. I would like to ask you how you see the contribution of women to stability. In particular, what role can have the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network, the project that you are coordinating, as a tool for building a new security paradigm in the region? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let me first thank Admiral Agostini for organizing this seminar and for the kind invitation. We discussed about the importance to involve an organization such as WISE Italy in this seminar. And I'm honored to take part in this year edition of the Shared Med and help bring a female perspective into today's discussion. I am one of the few female speakers present at this event. Therefore, I carry the even more important responsibility to speak on behalf of the many female experts who do not always have the opportunity to sit at panels together with their male colleagues. If it's often said that we need to give women a voice, I would say that this is not exact. Women, we do have a voice, a strong voice, and we have a lot to say as well. Some men could still find this unbelievable, but we have a lot to say on economy, agriculture, health, and especially security. What we need are more platforms and enough opportunities where we can express our knowledge and competences. Redressing this unfair system, I would say an injustice, and creating more opportunities in terms of visibility and participation for women was also one of the pushing factors behind the establishment of the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network. As you correctly already pointed out, this is a project promoted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy in collaboration with two implementing partners. So one is EI, International Affairs Institute, and the other is, as already mentioned, Women in International Security Italy. The project is funded and included in the third Italian National Action Plan for the implementation of Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. And it was presented as one of the flagship initiatives of the Italian mandate at the Security Council as a non-permanent member of the Security Council in 2017. The objective is that the network combines Italy's top priority within the Security Council and its role in the strategic area, one of the strategic areas, which is the Mediterranean. It keeps the focus on stability. It supports preventive diplomacy and the peaceful resolution of conflict, and it commits to bolster the role of women, especially in conflict prevention and resolution processes, with a focus on high-level political positions. So what do we do? What are our objectives? We would try to increase the numbers of women working in mediation, especially on what is called the track one, the political mediation. But at the same time, we apply a multi-track approach, which means that we work at the same time at the political level, at the and informal level with think tank, with academia, with mediation support actors. And we work a lot also with women at the community level, the one who are involved on the ground. Women are precious agents of change, and their active and meaningful participation in the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts, international conflicts and crises, is one of the pillars of the already mentioned Women, Peace and Security agenda. Maybe some of you are familiar with this agenda. In the past weeks, it was mentioned very often because the international community celebrated the 20th anniversary since the adoption of the first resolution, which is namely Resolution 1325, on 31st October of the year 2000. This resolution was then followed by other 9 resolutions, and the 10 together, they build a normative framework of the Women, Peace and Security agenda. The main messages embedded in this agenda is that conflict affects women and men in a different way. Therefore, the solutions and the provision when we want to build peace and after a conflict needs to include a gender perspective. And in order to do that, women participation is key. The resolution wants to highlight the fact that women are important agents of change, and they need to be involved as an actor in building peace, and especially in preventing conflict as well. During the past years, a number of studies have demonstrated that when women participate in formal peace processes and they are able to exercise influence, there are positive effects for the likelihood of reaching a peace agreement, and also for the quality of the text and the durability of the peace. So it's important, we not stress enough that it's important not to simply add women as a token in a peace process. We don't want to see just some chairs with women sitting around the table, or in these days in a Zoom platform, but we really need to enable them to be to have a space where they can be really active and active participant and exercise influence. Between 1992 and 2019, women constituted on average only the 13% of negotiators, the 6% of mediators, and the 6% of signatories in major peace processes around the world. So there we can see some minor progress in women's participation, but still only 7 out of 10 peace processes did not include women mediators or women signatories. And this indicates that only few women, in fact, participate in the political life and in the of the country, and they had a leadership role as negotiator, guarantors, or witnesses of the process. In 2020, the peace efforts had similar struggles to include women. For example, we had around 10% of negotiators in the Afghan talks. We have also a slightly higher percentage of negotiators in Libyan's political discussion. Recently, in the current dialogue in Tunisia, we saw that 70 Libyan women participated in the dialogue and also made a statement and took some formal commitments. And we had 0% of negotiators in Yemen and in Libya's military talks. So we saw that one current peace process, namely the one in Libya, is led now by a woman chief mediator, Stephanie Williams, acting head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya. And this is the first time in 6 years as a woman holds this role, which is a very important sign. Also, the progress done in the past weeks show how important it is also to lead by example. It's easier to have more women involved when a woman is also leading by example an entire political process. But the continued failure to include women in peace processes ignores what has been already demonstrated by research and contribution, and overlooks the potential strategy to respond more effectively to security threats around the world. So why do we want to include women? Why do we develop strategies and instruments such as the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network? This is happening because it's clear that peace agreements fail too frequently, and there is a recidivism for civil war, which means that the strategy is wrong. This is something that is missing in how we do business. And we need to change the paradigm. We need to build new strategies and advance the security in a different way. The research of the past year has shown that when we include women at the peace table, the likelihood of reaching an agreement is higher, because women are often considered as external. They are honest brokers by the negotiating party. So they are perceived in a positive way. And this perception is rooted in their real exclusion, in the reality of women's exclusion within the society. So they operate outside the existing power structures and do not control fighting forces. So they are widely perceived as political impartial mediators in peace negotiations. So it's very important to involve them even in the formal roles, because they are perceived in a more positive way compared to men. As I said, the resulting agreement more often is more durable and better implementing. It's important to remind that a peace process doesn't end with the achievement of the agreement with the signature, the signature of the agreement. The peace process starts before the peace talks. It lasts during the period when the parties meet and discuss. But then the very important part is how it is implemented afterwards. If the process is not inclusive, and when I talk about inclusivity, I don't refer only to women or to a specific group of women, but I really look at the entire and the broader society. And one woman will not represent the half of the population, which is the 50% of the population is made by women. So we need to involve diversity, ethnic diversity, religious diversity. So if the process is inclusive, this will be reflected in the agreement, and the society will easier take the ownership of this peace agreement, and the provision will be better implementing after the peace process. It was also proved that when civil society organizations participate in the process, they make a peace agreement 64% less likely to fail. Only 3% of the military in UN mission are women, and the majority of them are employed as a support staff. This remains a big problem, and this area is one of the areas of concern also of the Secretary General Guterres, that since it started his mandate, committed to double these figures by 5 years. So this was 2016, and this is also why during the mandate at the Security Council, Italy decided to align with this commitment and to support the establishment of the network. One of the priorities of the Security Council, the Secretary General, was to focus more on conflict prevention and use of mediation and preventive diplomacy as a solution, as a non-military solution to conflict resolution. And this is why our project intends to promote the key role of women in the field of conflict mediation, seeking to increase visibility and number of women peace builders, negotiators, and mediators, with a specific focus on the Mediterranean region. We want to do it through development of specific training on mediation technique, and also try to develop a more gender-sensitive and inclusive mediation. We often discuss about the importance of doing training or capacity building because it is a very sensitive issue, especially for women. Women are often the target of trainings, but then they are not involved when it comes to give them opportunities or to have official roles. So it's important to understand that the network works on capacity building and in developing new skills, especially with a focus this year. We work a lot on developing leadership skills, but at the same time, we support the development of skills with the creation of more opportunities, a new profession, and for women, because it's only by helping to create such opportunities that more women will be given the a possibility to intervene into peaceful management of conflict. In the face of international or national crisis, negotiation and mediation may appear to be the longest and more difficult way, but it is the only one that we have to take. The network of women mediators of the Mediterranean is part of a global initiative that wants to remind us the power of mediation and a non-military solution. As network in the Mediterranean, we work at a local, at regional, and at global level. The network has a geographical scope that includes 26 countries all around the Mediterranean Sea in all shores. Of course, the countries have a different situation. Some of them are in open conflict, some others are in post-conflict reconstruction. So we have to differentiate our work and the impact of the initiative. So we develop a process of listening to the needs, assessing the needs, and listening to what our members, who are today more than 50, coming from the different countries, need and would like to do with us in order to develop more strategic tools to build peace in our region. The members come from different backgrounds. They are represent an intergenerational group of women. Their different experience is one of the most appreciated element of the initiative, because having together civil society representative with diplomats, we have now also some former military, helps in bringing a diverse perspective to the dynamics, the security challenges in the area. And it's only through diversity perspective that we can understand the problems and try to develop a better solutions for the Mediterranean Sea. To create lasting peace, as I said, women really need a seat at the table. Some of these women are more interested in the political track, so we try to leverage the position, their experience, and to help them to be involved in the political dialogues. But at the other time, we also go more locally and we work with the communities. And to do that, we launch what we call antennas in some specific countries. So when the situation in the country, when the members were ready to work more at the local level, we launched what we call the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network Cyprus antenna, for example, followed by an antenna in Turkey. Only last week, we launched an antenna in Kosovo. So where in the countries where we have more women working together, we support them in localizing the activities, so and in working together with their political leadership and to connect what is happening in the country with the realm of global mediation. And within the framework of these activities, we, in the past months, we started to increase our collaboration and our work on Libya as well. We recently had a closed-door meeting between Stephanie Williams and the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Marina Sereni, involving the group of women, of Libyan women who are part of our networks. For us as a network and for Italy and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it's extremely important to support women, the ones who are officially sitting at the political forum, but also the women outside within the community to really be part and involved in all dialogues that will issue from the Berlin process. So we stand ready to support them in providing the opportunities to develop recommendation and to make all the necessary to grant that their voice is heard in the political fora. It's important to bear in mind that women in Libya have to be empowered in all areas. And try to avoid the stereotypical approach that women need only social provisions, but women really have to be involved in economy, in the security life. We have to address all the concern they have. And the involvement of civil society is key if we want to really develop a well-being society in this transition. Women, as I said, represent the half of the population, and we cannot think that we will build peace without them. This is this refers to Libya, but to any country around the world. And it's really easier to build a trusted and sustainable dialogue with a community, with a larger community. In countries where gender equality is more present, the possibility that a conflict re-emerges, it's lower. In fact, women are more able to detect in advance signs of violence, radicalization, and early warning signals. So they play a very important role in conflict prevention. All of us participating in this seminar, we in this virtual space today are connected by an interest and a strong passion in the Mediterranean Sea. We have the same goal of ensuring stability in the region and to address the root causes of conflict that includes poverty, climate change, lack of natural resources, and persecution. And gender inequality is very often one of the main causes of the social instability and disorders in this region. Altogether, we need to keep working for protecting the lives of women, men and boys and girls from human insecurity, and we must fight for dismantling trafficking networks in the South and Central Mediterranean. During the past year, our lives have been shaken by the unexpected spread of the COVID pandemic. We have seen how women were at the forefront of this pandemic, playing a central role to achieve sustainable solutions in every country, both in peace, in democratic society, and in conflict. Unfortunately, conflicts do not stop because there is a pandemic, while women paid a higher price due to the COVID. Their already limited access to health and reproductive system decreased. They had less economic revenues, and they therefore, then in their response to COVID, the gender perspective needs to be taken even more in consideration in this very difficult time. Italy has always had a privileged relationship with the Mare Nostrum. It is the cradle of our culture and our traditions, and it is once more the center of the current political and security challenges. The Libyan political transition, the situation in Turkey, the management of the migratory flows, the battle to defeat intolerance, racism, and religious discrimination. And last but not least, the fight in the name of gender equality. Late yesterday was the International Day on Violence Against Women. We oranged the world, as we say, to remember that another pandemic is affecting women's life and our society. Did you know that 1 out of 3 women has experienced a form of violence in her life? So this is the same in everywhere in the world, in the North, in Europe, and in the global South. You mentioned how the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network could act as a platform to build a new security paradigm. Peace cannot be achieved as long as we involve only war actors, and we don't invite at the table the peace actors as well. We need to listen to women's voices, respect their perspective, and include their experience and vision into the planning and implementation of security strategies. This will lead to a better and more sustainable peace. Until this will not be done, using the words of my friends Rida Al-Tubuli, one of the founding members of the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network and the president of Together We Build It, a Libyan initiative, we will miss the full picture. The construction of an egalitarian and non-discriminatory society is a responsibility that must be shared between men and women, even if sometimes this can represent an obstacle in some contexts. And when I say this, I don't look only at the south of the Mediterranean, but I refer to Italy as well. Some recent episodes when we heard that women should stay at home are not competent enough and not psychologically stable enough to become judges, or a more recent video that was portrayed and showcased at the public television no later than yesterday, about the way how women should shop in a sexy way, really show that there is still a long way to go to change the patriarchal culture of our society, starting from the Italian context. The way towards peace and stabilization is a journey, and as women part of the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network, we are working together hand in hand across the divides, the political and ethical diversities, for building together sustainable peace for all of us in the Mediterranean region and beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fellini. I would now like to open the floor to a session of questions and answers. If you allow me, I would like to start with Ambassador Baradel and Professor Magri, who have to leave us earlier. So Ambassador Sabatel, the question is, I had a question myself in mind, but then a question from the floor came, which connects very well with the questions that I wanted to ask myself. The question is from the floor is the Joint Military Commission looking at the implementation of the ceasefire of October 23rd has not yet worked out an effective monitoring mechanism. How founded, in your view, is the concern that with a much too light mechanism, the whole Libya might end up depending on disrupting actions inspired by countries who might rather see the conflict frozen than solved, just like in Syria? My initial questions was, in fact, that you had mentioned that the EU is the option of choice to support the peace process in Libya. However, there are other actors which are playing a role in the Libyan crisis. Do you see opportunities for the EU to work together with other actors, or rather you see a zero-sum equation in the interaction between the EU and other stakeholders in the country? Thank you. Ambassador Baradel? Ambassador Baradel? I think Ambassador has disconnected. So I would like now to ask a question to Professor Magri. Professor Magri, in early December, the European Union Council will need to address the decision on sanctions on Turkey that was postponed at the beginning of October. Since then, Turkey has not shown any signs of trying to be more cooperative towards the European Union. how likely would you consider that the EU Council might approve sanctions, and what would the immediate consequences for Turkey be? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a tough question. Because Europe with Turkey faces the same dilemma that United States and Biden face with Turkey, meaning that both Europe and United States have plenty of reason.
I want only to see if the ambassador is still in the panel. Max.
Can I continue?
Professor Magri, please go.
Yeah.
Yes.
So both Europe and United States have reason to complain, to take a tougher.
Excuse me, Professor Magri. I hear a background noise. Can I ask you to unmute your microphones if you are not online?
Vieni a vedere.
Excuse me, can you mute your microphone if you are not speaking, because you are disturbing the presentation? Thank you. Please, Professor Magri, go ahead.
Let me try again. We are disturbed by Turkish interferences. Now, what I'm trying to say is that both Europe and United States have reason to complain and to take a tougher stance with Turkey, but both face the same dilemma, which is we need Turkey. Europe need Turkey on one crucial issue that was your second question to me, migrants. We know that there are a few millions of migrants which are posted, let me use this term, which is used in military or diplomatic activities, that are posted in Turkey. And Erdogan has not at all been shy in saying in several occasions that is ready and willing to open up the flood again. And for United States, as someone mentioned in several occasions before me, Turkey is a member of NATO, is an important member of NATO, and is playing a crucial role in all the crises in the region. Actually, in some of them, it's also part of the problem, not always the solution. So, to make a long story short, I think in principle we could have more, but the diplomatic and realistic assessment of the situation could prevent any major step.
Thank you, Professor Magri. I would like also to tell the other panelists, if they feel the need to step in on some questions addressed to any one of the panelists, please feel free to do so and to take the floor. Professor Magri, I take the opportunity that you are still that you have still some time with us to ask you another question. The crisis in Syria and Libya highlight the unprecedented role of militias and other paramilitary organizations, mercenaries and armed groups. Should the international community aim at fostering traditional stabilization tools and programs such as the security sector reform and DDR in those countries, or are those countries bound to live without a regular army, only relying on alternative security providers? Thank you.
They have both. That's the problem. They do not only have militias, but they have also some kind of regular army, and not necessarily matched with the objective and the strategies of the other. I think the situation of Syria and Libya is different. They both share a presence of militia, but this is not exactly the same situation. We don't have exactly the same situation in the two countries. I think we will have to live with this for a while. There is no way to put this situation into the correct track unless the political and stabilization of the country is not political stabilization, and the general stabilization of the country has been, I would say completed, but I would say started.
Thank you, Professor Magri. I now have some questions from Admiral Asser. First question from the floor. General Graziano, in his opening remarks, emphasized the need for a greater EU-NATO cooperation from the tactical to the strategic level. Given the political sensitivities and issues that we all know, what areas provide the ground for such greater cooperation? The main one so far seems to be sharing of information. But are there further areas where collaborations can be more concrete? Admiral.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to reinforce what Paolo Magri told us a few minutes ago about what can we do in face of Turkey position, and I would say that I agree completely with him. We need Turkey for migrants. We need Turkey as well for terrorism, because a lot of terrorist networks are going through Turkey towards Near East, towards Syria, for example. And so the cooperation against terrorism is Turkey is a very strong element in the network of cooperation against terrorism. And the US needs Turkey for Russia, for sure. It's a key element in NATO. My view on that point is that we need to mix at the same time engagement and sanction. It's exactly what I've done Putin after the Sukhoi 24 shot in 2015. He decided to have economic sanctions against Turkey, but at the same time he continued to discuss with him, selling S-400 missiles, for example. And it succeeded. At the end of the day, Turkey managed to find a way to deal with Putin, with Russia, and it was the beginning of the Astana Agreement. And Trump did exactly the same after the S-400 missiles purchase. He launched some economic sanctions. And once again, Erdogan understood perfectly well this mixed actions, I would say. And the EU must do the same, exactly the same. Not trying to find where are the bad and where are the good, but try to manage on a case-by-case basis and manage each difficulties with all the tools that we have in hand. It means probably economic sanctions, and we have a lot of pressure to do with Turkey. Not total sanction for sure. There is a mutual need to continue to have exchange and so on. But some sanctions, just to explain that there are some red lines, and Turkey, Erdogan has not completely free hands to do what he wants in the Med. That's my point. A mix of engagement and sanction. And to answer your question about EU and NATO, clearly it's a very difficult issue because of Turkey. And that's the point. That's the main point. The main difficulty is to make EU and NATO cooperate, especially in the Med. The only common point could be Russia, maybe, how to deal with Russia in East Med when and if Putin decided to have a stronger stand in East Med with area denial or something like that. There are ways for cooperation in that field. Maybe there are ways for cooperation against terrorism as well. It's more or less a military role than a justice and police one, but clearly maybe the two organizations can work together. But in the years to come, cooperation between both, which used to be difficult because of the Brits, will be difficult because of the Turks.
The moderator is muted.
Excuse me. I have, thank you very much, Admiral. I have now a question from Turkey, actually, on Turkey. A question from Commander Ulas Segdin, who is an officer from the Turkish Navy. And how do you see the role of Turkey in Libya? And is there, and I would add, do you see any possibility for the EU and Turkey to work together in Libya on the peace process? Perhaps this question, which I wanted to address to Ambassador Sabadell, could be also addressed to Professor Magri, if you wish to take it. Thank you.
Turkey has been, confirming what I was saying before, has been a game changer in Libya. I would dare to say that if we had not had Turkey military support, we would not have the ceasefire we are having right now. Echoing what Pascal Asser, Admiral Asser was saying, this is a perfect example of the need we have with Turkey and the necessity to be strict and strong in some area to be able to cooperate and engage in other areas. There is only one point in which on which I'm a little bit worried. As Pascal Asser said, the recipe is made by very strong posture and then very soft one. Without the first, you cannot have the second. And I'm a little bit hesitant to imagine that Europe can be as strong, the first element of the recipe, as Putin was or as Trump was. And without that strong posture, it's tough to move into engagement and soft posture. And this is especially delicate with an extremely clever interlocutor as Erdogan and Turkey, which is extremely good in assessing the power and the determination of the counterpart. And is extremely good. Look at what Turkey has done in the last few years. It is crucial everywhere. It's not the zero problem strategy Cavusoglu had in mind. It's a mess of problem everywhere, from Nagorno to Cyprus and Greece, to Syria, to Libya. But in spite of that, it is relevant in all these scenarios. So you need to be tough to be able to engage and be soft. Are we European able to be tougher, to be able to be soft?
Thank you, Professor Magri. This was a very illuminating reading of this issue. Admiral, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm perfectly in line with Paolo Magri, Professor Magri. The difficulty for the EU will be to articulate the tough part of the the mixed. Just one point about Libya. Clearly, Turkey has had a role in reequilibrate to make the balance between both sides in Libya, and that was probably one of the good aspects of it. I have more concern with the use of the Islamic milice fighters coming from Syria, which can be very, very destabilizing in this area, which is already very volatile. And the other point is the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood, which can destabilize Tunisia and Maghreb. And so I'm very, very cautious personally about this use of ideology, which is very anti-West, in fact, anti-European, and could be very destabilizing. So once again, a mixed, and it's very difficult to deal with Erdogan today because he's very clever, and he showed us that he's always getting on his feet, even after a situation which can be delicate. It can be difficult, and that's the point. And so the answer is inside the EU, we have now to learn to deal with this new world, which need to have a real geopolitical stand, as Mr. Burrell said at the beginning of our meeting.
Thank you very much, Admiral. Thank you. I have now a question from the floor for Dr. Fellin. Dr. Fellin, can we expect an effective representation of women in leading positions in the Libyan institutions? Thank you.
Libyan institution.
No, it's
No, it was a joke. I was saying, let's first have Libyan institutions.
Yeah, I agree. But perhaps the participation of women can help to build them. Dr. Fellin, can you hear me?
Yes, I think that
the question was about the possible participation of women in even building Libyan institutions, or yeah.
Yeah, I think that the joke of Professor Magri was correct. I mean, the point is how Libya will go through this transitional process, and during this year, our joint efforts will be really to support the women's participation towards the democratic election and see that women are present and be there to build a new institutions. In the statement that these women the groups made the Tunis dialogue, there is a request to have the 30% of women present in new institutions. But as long as women are not really participating in the political life, it will be very difficult to be then jumping from the civil society into the high-level political position. So it's a process, of course. Everything, it's part of a process. The point is that the time is now. We cannot wait longer that the transition is over. So we will have to push a little bit as an international society, and the Libyan, but the Libyan women are ready for this. So there will be a support. I think that there is a good momentum. As I mentioned, the fact that Ms. Stephanie Williams is leading now the mission has a positive impact on this. And there's a lot of pressure by the Libyan women, female organization, and the international organizations as well to take this opportunity as the last one. I mean, this is really the moment where things have to change. I'm quite optimistic, if I may say. We cannot expect a gender balance. That would be really, I think, too much, because as I said in my intervention, even what we call democratic societies are far away from having a gender equality, a real gender equality in terms of culture and in position. And Italy is one of these examples. But I think that we are in the right, we are walking in the right way.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fellin. I think we have time for a last question, which comes from Dr. Marcuzzi, who is analyst and researcher at the NATO Foundation, which could be addressed both to Professor Magri and Admiral Asser. Given the economic difficulties multiplied by the pandemic, will actors such as Russia and Turkey, whose economy are not solid, be able to maintain their assertive foreign policy and interventionist footing in the region? Thank you. Who wants to reply to this?
That's a big question indeed, because we are looking at two countries which are overstretched and are both facing, as well as us, some problems. And in Turkey is particularly relevant because, as we know, Russia has a sovereignty fund which can stabilize the situation, while on the contrary, Turkey is heavily dependent on financial flows from abroad. And anytime there are doubts on the economy, we see the lira, as we have seen, the Turkish lira plumb, as we have seen in the last few weeks. And now a little bit better when the son-in-law of Erdogan was removed. It's crucial to understand how sustainable is the overstretch, but at the same time, and this is true for Turkey and for Russia, let's keep in mind that when there is in economic uncertainty in the country, the nationalistic approach and the external intervention under the nationalistic narrative is one of the tools governments have, and Turkey and Russia are no exception, to distract the public opinion from the uncertainty of the economic situation. So we have seen this in Turkey and Russia in the past. For example, we cannot understand Turkey involvement, heavy involvement in Azerbaijan, in Nagorno, if we don't keep that in mind, how it is relevant for nationalism in Turkey to have a clear position in that area. So there may be less money, but there may be more interest in being active abroad as a way to keep consensus at home.
Thank you, Professor. Admiral, do you want to also take the floor on this?
Yes, I'm completely in line with what Paolo said. I think that paradoxically, the more difficult will be the economic situation, the more easy it will be for Putin and Erdogan to have a headlong rush, I would say, and to try to go ahead in their nationalistic approach, because it could put the population behind them. And we have seen already that the internal difficulties for Erdogan during the last election in 2019 did not prevent him at all from continuing in reinforcing his politics in the Eastern Med. And my concern could be the agency, the Balkans as well. We can have some difficulties there, provoked either by Turkey, either by Russia, because of their economic difficulties. So there is no, in my view, not real hope that these difficulties, economic difficulties connected with the COVID pandemic will make the policy more soft.
Well, thank you very much, Admiral, and perhaps we can now draw this panel to its conclusion. I would like to thank all the panelists for their scintillating discussion and illuminating comments. I would also like to thank those who have participated with their questions. And I would like to thank Admiral Agostini and his staff for organizing this event and for having us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now hand you over to Operation Commander Fabio Agostini.
Thank you very much. I would like only to personally thank all the speakers that have participated in this panel and for their clear, open, and very relevant testimony to this event, even if I know that they are very busy in this period. Surely the discussion about the issue that we have touched this morning in Shade Med has certainly benefited of that. Thank you very much again. I really appreciate. Thanks again.
Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. The conference will be temporarily paused and will resume at 14:20 with panel 2 discussions.
Stai condividendo qualcosa?
Sì.
Ah, lo sfondo? Ok. Ok, sbaglio. Perfetto.